Welcome to the Uncomfortable Conversations podcast, the untold stories of the 3HO Kundalini Yoga community. I'm your host, Guru Nishan, and I was born and raised in 3HO. I started this podcast with several intentions, and I read them at the beginning of every episode. Number 1, to break the veil of silence that has long permeated and continues to strangle the 3HO Kundalini Yoga community in the name of neutrality. Number 2, to validate and help clarify the complex feelings of those who have joined this lifestyle, were born and raised into it, and or who have practiced or taught Kundalini Yoga. Number 3, to encourage active listening to uncomfortable conversations from our community as a revolutionary act of self and collective healing. Number 4, to let survivors know that we see them, we believe them, we love them, and we will fight for their truth to be addressed. Number 5, to let teachers who are denying, gaslighting, or spiritually bypassing know that what they are doing is willfully ignorant and re-traumatizing victims. Number 6, to illuminate the inherent racism, homophobia, cultural appropriation, and exploitation that perpetuates the teachings, 3HO lifestyle, and overall community ethos. Number 7, to stop the perpetuation of gaslighting and victim shaming by naming it for what it is. Number 8, to dismantle internalized shame, guilt, toxic positivity, and light-washing mentality. Number 9, to honor all of the parts of ourselves that have been forgotten or silenced. Number 10, to honor each and every body that has come through our community, both named and unnamed. And number 11, to encourage people to do their own research, process their own emotions, get somatic therapy and other therapy and support as needed, to draw your own conclusions, and to be critical thinkers rather than to just blindly follow anyone. Please remember that your story matters. Please share it when you're ready. We're here to listen and to support you. On today's episode, I would like to welcome our guest, Bibi Bhani Khalsa. She joined 3HO in 1970 in Columbia, Maryland. She landed in Phoenix, Arizona the following year and has lived there ever since, except for a brief time in Heber, Arizona. She's a musician who has made several recordings over the years. She spent time in LA and Espanola under Yogi Bhajan's direction. She taught Kundalini Yoga for many years, but never transitioned to become a teacher trainer. She has 2 children who both went to school in India. She decided to leave 3HO and Sikh Dharma last summer after learning of the widespread corruption and criminal acts committed and perpetuated by Yogi Bhajan. I'd like to welcome Bibi Bhani. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
It's my pleasure. My blessing. I'm so excited. Yeah.
I want to just say I know you, so this is really fun. Obviously I was born in the Phoenix community, and so you've known me since I was born, and it's very exciting for me to have you come here to share your story. Will you share with us why you feel it's time and why you're here sharing your story today?
Well, I have been a huge fan of this podcast. I listened to every single episode. I've just been so drawn to hear these stories. And they have just really kind of opened up something in me just to hear everyone's perspective. I found that I can relate to and identify with something in every single one of them, first generation, second generation, whether they're from Mexico, Europe, United States, wherever they're from, people I knew, people I didn't know, but, they all resonate with me somehow. And, I had a long history at the HO and started close to the very beginning. And there are a lot of people who maybe are not so aware of things that happened in the very beginning and how things started. So I'd like to particularly share that part and kind of let people know a little bit about my story from the beginning. I feel that stories are just the most powerful way to communicate and get a point across. Like if you try to tell somebody, you should believe this, or this happened, or don't do that, don't do this. It's it's not a personal experience. So I think that's why, like Pamela's book was so powerful, is because she was just sharing her personal experience, and it wasn't, she wasn't vilifying or condemning. She was just saying, this happened to me, and then people can draw their own conclusions. So I think that's why the podcast and people telling stories is so powerful, because people can just take from it, what resonates with them and make their own decisions, come to their own conclusions about what they believe from what they hear. So, I just think that this is just a wonderful platform, and I am just so proud of you for doing this, knowing you since you were a baby. And I used to take care of you when you were a baby. They probably don't remember, but and I never knew your whole story until you shared. I mean, it's so amazing that we knew these people, we lived with these people for decades, and we didn't really know what was going on behind the scenes. And it's like, wow, I mean,
isn't that astounding?
Yeah.
Right.
So it's just been such a great revelation that we can, now kind of put all the pieces together, like you say, the puzzle pieces. I mean, all the people that people mention in the podcast, I'm like, oh, I knew that person, I was there, and like, oh, and that's what really happened. It's amazing.
I want to just say thank you so much for pointing all of that out. I got tingles so many times when you were talking about the impact of what a story offers us, because it's a glimpse into each other's worlds, which then awaken parts of us that might have been forgotten or in slumber, and it creates this tapestry internally and externally that can create a level of closeness, but also a level of healing through each other's experiences and shared vulnerability.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, yeah. Just and I've never been one to kind of speak up and speak out before. I've always kind of been the one just kind of in the background and let someone else talk. And so I feel like it's time for me to raise my voice and speak out and speak up.
Well, for that, I'm proud of you. I'm very excited to hear your story and for you to share with us today. Yeah. And yeah, for listeners to get perspective, Bibi Bhani was pregnant at the same time as my mom with their sons, which is, one of my brothers. And so, the history, the familiarity, you taking care of me as a baby, to me, this speaks to the real richness that our community has offered historically, but then also, like you're saying, that you can be so close and in such proximity for so many years and absolutely not know what's going on inside their everyday life. So it's kind of like that double good, and like, what? How is that possible?
Yeah, I just finished reading the book Becoming by Michelle Obama. And in the very last lines of her epilogue, there was a couple of sentences that just like totally seemed that express how I feel and how I feel about sharing stories in this podcast. So I'd like to just read those before I start my story. It says, there is power in allowing yourself to be known and heard, in owning your unique story, in using your authentic voice. And there's grace in being willing to know and hear others. This, for me, is how we become. It's like, perfect.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you for listening and letting these stories impact and unravel you. I think that's a part of the courageous work that each of us have to allow in, and then thank you for raising your voice and being here with us to share. So start where you'd like to start.
So I would like to give a little backstory about my, growing up years to show how I was, susceptible to becoming involved in what I know now is a cult. And so I grew up mostly in Lexington, Massachusetts, on the East Coast. And, my family was, I have two sisters, one older, one younger, so I'm a middle child. And there were some difficulties in my family. My mother had some mental illness issues, and it led to her kind of keeping me away from having a real good relationship with my father. So, that was kind of missing in my growing up and adolescence years of being close to my father. So, I think I was probably looking for some father figure. But I did get some help from a therapist who was, and she really inspired me. So when I applied to college, that was my goal, was to become she was a psychiatric social worker, and so that was my goal, was to become a psychiatric social worker when I when I was in college. But things happened to change that. But so anyway, I ended up applying to some colleges. My first choice was Antioch College in Yellow Springs, Ohio, which was kind of this liberal progressive college, and it had this unique kind of work study program where you would alternate semesters working and studying to get more kind of real world experience. And so I was actually put on the waiting list of that college, and I decided on another one. And then just before school was, about ready to start, I got a letter, and they were saying, well, we are opening another branch of Antioch in Columbia, Maryland, which is at that time was a very new kind of planned city, right between Washington and Baltimore. And it was kind of this city built by this vision of this Rouse Corporation, Jim Rouse, and it was to kind of make smaller neighborhoods and communities rather than kind of the urban sprawl that was happening, to kind of plan things out where there could be a small little community, a little neighborhood, and then there'd be a store that you could just walk to, or an open space that you had access to, and to make it a little bit nicer place for people to live. So some reason, somehow, I don't know why, Antioch decided they would open a branch of their college there. So they said, you can go to Antioch, Columbia if you want. So I was like, okay, it sounds good. So it was a very open kind of situation. We didn't have dorms. We all lived in apartments, and there was one big old building that was our headquarters. That was the only old building in the whole town, I think. But then most of our classes were like professors' homes, and so it was very
like alternative school. I remember when I was looking for university and I found Antioch, it was like one of those alternative learning, independent learning environments. So I'm getting what you're putting down here.
Right. So I ended up there and got through my first year. Did some experimentation with drugs and things like that, as well as trying to get my work done. And, I'd never been away from home much, and I was pretty naive about things. But, I got through the year. Actually, during my childhood, just backtrack a little bit, is one of the things that kind of helped me to get through was when I was about 15, I decided to take up guitar, and I'd always liked to sing, so I started, singing folk songs and that kind of thing. Joan Baez and Judy Collins and those people, and you know, that was kind of my thing, of my way to sort of express myself and my emotions, and you know, a channel for that. And but I never would sing in public. I was very shy about that. You know, I would only with just family and a few close friends, but I never, you know, I was too shy to sing out in public. So in college, I actually hooked up with a couple of people who were also musicians. We did a little bit of singing out in some coffee houses and stuff. So that was like a kind of big step for me to go a little more public with my singing. And I did have one, you know, I experimented a little bit with some psychedelics, and I had one experience with a mescaline trip, I believe, that well, it was actually a very spiritual experience. And it was my first glimpse into anything spiritual. You know, I wasn't brought up with any, you know, spiritual religion or anything. I didn't have any kind of experience with that. So but it was, you know, it was a thing where I sort of got into a space of kind of feeling fearful, but then just breaking through the fear and just kind of seeing that, you know, if you surrender, the oneness of everything. So it was just kind of this real kind of eye-opening experience that, you know, everything is one, and you just have to kind of break through your fear of feeling so separate. And so that was a good experience. You know, all the drug experiences are not so great, but that was a good one. I had kind of a crazy roommate who you know, we did some other things together. But anyway, got through my first year. Then that summer, I think I was still in Colombia. I didn't really want to go home, but then my friend of mine who I'd been playing music with, this man. He was a little bit older. For some reason, I don't know if he was even in college there, but he was there, and he kind of had a thing for me, and he knew I didn't really feel the same way, but we played music together, and he had gone to England to for the summer, and he was going to do some music over there. So he calls me up and says, "Well, you should come over. You know, this is a great place, and we can sing in some of the clubs over here and stuff." And so I decided to, why not? You know, I had nothing else to do. So I went home and earned some money, and my parents helped me pay for the rest, and flew to England, and it was in this little island off of Cornwall called the Scilly Islands, and I know he ended up there, but anyway, so we can work at a restaurant here. So I got there, we did a couple of gigs, and then, you know, he found another girlfriend, and he ended up leaving. And so I was still there, and I figured, well, I'll just make the best of it, you know. And I ended up meeting this older man who was into what he called sleep learning, where he would allow you to listen to these like recorded messages in your sleep, kind of the subliminal messages to help you, you know, in your life somehow. So I was at a different restaurant now. I had a roommate who I liked, this older woman, and so, you know, I said, "Well, would you want to try this?" You know, he had to like set it up in our room so we could listen to it at night. And so she said fine, and so we did this, and you know, I didn't have any particular experience right away, but then I ended up, it was time to leave. She said, "Well, go stay up with my son in Coventry," and his girlfriend. And so I went up there, and all of a sudden I kind of had this revelation of like, because I've been, you know, kind of depressed and always feeling like, oh, I'm not happy, and I'm worried about this and that, and anxiety. And all of a sudden I just kind of came to this revelation that, well, you know, if you just kind of focus on the present moment, the here and now, that, you know, don't think about the past, don't think about the future, just be present. You know, we all know that, but I never had realized that before. So somehow I was able to do that. And I believe that somehow that recording, that subliminal recording, had kind of helped touch that off in me. So that's, you know, it was something about, you know, you will find your true creative, you know, path and that kind of thing. So that it sort of opened something up in me, and I had to fly home shortly after that to go back to college. And I remember thinking as I was flying home, well, I was into yoga. I did some yoga classes when I was in high school, and I really liked them. And maybe I should try yoga again. So I got back to Colombia, and there, when I got there, someone said, there's some yoga classes going on over here. This new place opened up where they're teaching yoga, and I thought, oh, okay, I'm going to try that. So it was a little like apartment kind of where they have these different apartment complexes. It was a small kind of downstairs apartment, and I went in, and there was this lovely lady there, just seemed so peaceful. She was wearing like this lavender leotard and these like cotton print pants, and had her hair pulled back, and she sat there, and she, we did this yoga, which was a little different than the yoga I'd done, and it was like, wow, this is really cool. And her name was Mary Taylor, and she informed me that her husband Bob Taylor was he was actually in prison in Pennsylvania. And the reason that they're in Colombia is because he had a work release program where he could drive down from Pennsylvania to this program called Grassroots Program, which is like a drug rehabilitation type program. Go figure. That he was working at, and that's why they had set up in Colombia. And so I was just totally in love with this. I mean, right away, it just really resonated something in me. I remember they had this little printed sheet, and it had on the Ekankar mantra, and it was kind of written. It was like this mandala, and it said Ekankar Satnam Siddhi Wa Guru. It's a little Wa Guru is how they said it then, and it said, chant this for 40 days, 2.5 hours before the sunrise, and you will be liberated. I was like, whoa, I can do that. Yeah. So, doesn't sound too hard. So, rude. So I, very soon I moved into the ashram. There was a couple of other women there, and it was just a fun situation. We had these like Sunday feasts and stuff, and people would come, and there were some other people who came and taught. And it seems like very shortly, within like a month or two, they said, well, why don't you get up and teach this time? So, you sit up and teach the class. I was like, okay. So it wasn't, we didn't have manuals, we didn't have kriyas, it was like, chant, we did Om Namo, chant Om Namo, and then it'll just come through you, just do it, So, yeah, sure. So, that was fun. And then finally, Bob was released from prison, and just spoiler, Bob Taylor is also AKA Gurjot Singh, who
I didn't know.
So anyway, he came back, and we ended up moving to a little larger space. There was about 4 women in the ashram at this point, and 1 guy. And things were kind of different when he was there. He was like super serious and kind of stern, and it wasn't so much fun. But I kind of stuck it out, and I started by the second semester. I'd gone to college, started my college semester in September, and then by January, when it was time to start second semester after the holiday break, I was like, no, I don't think I want to go back to school. What do I need school for? I'm on a spiritual path.
So Bob Taylor was Gurjot Singh. Was Mary Taylor Gurjot Kaur, or is that somebody else?
No, that was his first wife.
Got it.
First wife, Mary,
I don't know their story, so okay.
Yeah. So anyway, so I didn't continue with college, and ended up going out and doing house cleaning jobs to earn some money, and I remember being like really constipated during that time for some reason. It's like, I don't know, I had this, like, it was, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it was, some kind of physical thing going on with that, which I don't know, um, we made it through the year. And then it was like, we were told that summer solstice was happening in June. So I was kind of thinking, yeah, summer solstice, this sounds like a fun thing to do. We knew it was going to be in Colorado. And so we were all planning to go.
What year is this?
This is 1971.
And have you changed your name yet, or no?
No.
Okay.
So we had, so then also YD, Yogi Bhajan, had visited, because we would go to Washington, D.C., where Larry and Ganga were teaching. Peter Singh, Peter Kaur were there too. I remember them. But he taught a class there. There was no tantric or anything at that time, but I remember him teaching a class that we went to in some big place. And my memory of it is lying on the floor and having him walk around and walk on our backs. Yeah, so I don't know. And then he did come to Colombia at one point and visit, and I remember Premka was with him, and he just seemed like this kind of awesome guy. So we went to Solstice in Peony, Colorado. This is the famous.
Wait, pause. You got to go back. He was this awesome guy. Like, give us the feeling of what you were perceiving.
I think he was just very powerful, and I didn't have a very clear picture of him at that point, but he was the one that kind of was the one who had originated all of this, and so this was something that I felt like I had signed on to, so I was keep kind of checking it out. Mm-hmm. So summer solstice was a kind of goal for us, because things had gotten a little bit tense at the ashram. We could tell that Bob and Mary weren't getting along that well, and things were a little bit like I said, it was kind of serious. It was kind of serious and heavy vibes a little bit, but I still did the yoga and stuff, and so we did. Remember, we drove to Solstice with Dr. Allen. He wasn't a doctor yet, but I think he was in med school. He had a van. He drove down. We all got piled in his van, and I don't know if Bob and Mary went with us, but some of the other people did. And so I had my little duffel bag and my cup tent and my guitar, and off we went. And by then I had started doing some chants and things on guitar, and switched over from my melancholy folk songs, and I went to Colorado, this beautiful place on top of a mountain, and we all set up our tents, and it wasn't a huge gathering, by today's standards, I guess, probably a couple of hundred people maybe. We did tantric. It was a very heavily physical type of tantric out in the blazing sun. I remember, waking up in Prasada, and then, you probably heard the stories about the irrigation canal there's an irrigation canal running above the property and we would, if there were no showers, so we would all jump in this cold irrigation canal before Svatna. Jump in and then jump out and dry off. That was our morning cold shower. Wow. So, yeah. And I remember I met Yogi Bhajan. He looked at me, he shook my hand, and he said, "You are a destined student," and oh, cool, and so, but I felt like, wow, this is a pretty cool situation. I had people from all over, and it was kind of on music and fun and food, and so it was a very enjoyable time that summer. But then one thing happened that where they decided one evening, they said, well, we're gonna. I think I kind of got wind of this beforehand, but I'm not sure. But what happened was that they said, well, okay, all the men are going to line up on one side, all the women on the other side, and then we're going to kind of match people off to get married. Yeah. So I was like, no way. I'm not going to get involved in that. I'm like, no, I'm not ready to get married. I don't think I ever want to get married. So I ran the other way when that happened. But I think there were several people who were matched up during that summer solstice who were quite well known. So,
Wow.
so that was kind of a thing. But I was still not, no, I don't want to get married. I'm not into that. So, but towards the end of solstice, then I heard that there was a bus, someone's big school bus, converted school bus type thing, that they were going to go down to Santa Fe for this like 8-week yoga intensive, and would I like to come to that? And I said, yeah, why not? Nothing else to do. So I hopped in the bus with my stuff and drove down to New Mexico. And this place was outside of Santa Fe. I'm not sure exactly where it was. It was some property, way long before the Espanola ashram. It was a kind of a desert place out in the desert. And I think it was owned by the couple, Dawson and Karen Hayward, who were running this intensive. They were early students of Yogi Bhajan. And they, so we all set up our little tents, and we would go down to the arroyo, to the wash in the morning to do our morning sadhana outside and watch the sunrise. And we had different little classes during the day on, how to cook, how to be a woman, this and that. It wasn't a lot of the teachings, but some of the teachings were started. And and so there were some quite well-known people there. Okay, well-known, like Bill and Celeste, who became Waheguru and Singing Car. They were actually matched up during that summer, that little yoga course. They were, I don't know if they chose to or they were kind of put together, but they were, I think, actually married that summer. There was another young woman named Lakshmi, and they were pressuring her to get married to this guy named Marshall, and she didn't want to. She was they were like, no, you have to do this. You have to do this. And I helped her make her wedding dress, but she was not happy about it. I'm sure the marriage didn't last, but they made her get married. And so I was still, no, I'm not going to do that. That's not for me. I'm never going to do that. So, so we got through the summer, and it was fun. I mean, there was people there. There's like Gurnam Bhajan Kar, Ramane, I guess she's called now, Claudia, and her little boy Tai Chi, he was called. Now her bhajan were there. He was just like a little baby or toddler. Several other people who were kind of, still around, but anyway, it was a good time. And by the end of the summer, it was time to leave. I ended up going with one of the other people and driving to the West Coast and then back to the East Coast. We did drive through Phoenix, I remember, in summer, and thinking like, wow, this is never come back here again. It's way too hot. So, but so got back home, and then Columbia. I think Bob and Mary had kind of moved on to something else. They were either in DC, or maybe I know they were sent to Kansas City for a time. So I think the Columbia Ashram had kind of disbanded at that point. But then I heard that there was this intensive course for artists and musicians in Tucson, Arizona. That I thought, well, that's perfect. I want to go to that. It was taught by the teacher there, Satnam Singh, in conjunction with the teacher from Phoenix, Babadon. And so this is where I met your mother.
I was going to say, this is what my mom went to when she first got started.
There. And so we went there. It was fun. We did a bunch of singing. We went up to the mountains, up to Mount Lemon, and did part of our course up there. And I was kind of creative. I can't remember all we did, but did yoga, did music, this and that. So, but then by the time it was over, I said, what do I do now? I didn't relate so much to Satnam Singh, but I really liked Babadon. And he was like this. He was older. Like we were like 20 or something, and he was like almost 40. So he was like this old guy, almost about the age of Yogi Bhajan, but he seemed like very, very wise and but he was also fun and creative. And I was like, yeah, that's what I want. So your mom and I think we kind of decided that together. It's like, yeah, let's go to Phoenix. That's where it's at. So we decided to move to the Phoenix Ashram. So ended up there. It was pretty small at that point. Just a few people. There was, and at this point, he was called Babadon, and he was giving people names, and so all the guys were Babas. So yeah, there's Baba Lee. That was your dad.
My dad became Baba Lee. So they just started adding Baba to their first names, right? And go ahead and tell us some of the names. Baba Lee.
Baba John, that was my future husband, became Baba Suri Das and then Baba Suri Singh. And then there was Baba Mark and Baba, there's one other guy, I think it was named like Turi or something. But I'm not, don't remember him really well. And there's a few women there. We had like a Shakti room, they called it the Shakti room, and then the Shiva room, I think they called it, was like the upstairs kind of attic place where all the guys stayed. And so, but there were always people coming through because he was always teaching like courses, it was before a teacher training, but this was kind of like that version of teacher training where you come to Phoenix and you learn about Kundalini Yoga and then you can go out and teach it. There was no official teacher training then where you have to get certified or anything. It was just, learn some yoga and then go teach. So, there was a lot of people coming through and he'd always do fun, creative things, like I remember one time he said, okay, so today, every time you say the word me, I, mine, you have to lie down on the floor and do the grace of God meditation. Which, the grace of God, you lie on the floor and the grace of God. But, just things like that, we're like, okay, because it made you conscious of thinking, saying the words me, my, mine, and your ego and this and that. But, he was always coming up with something fun. So, I liked it. And, we did singing and music and, yeah.
I was just going to ask, will you tell us where the ashram was and describe that a little bit?
Yes,
because I just got my last trip there this past March, cutting my stepmom, she brought me on a tour.
Right.
So I want you to give the listeners a little taste because it was really neat for me.
Yeah, so it was on actually southern, kind of south part of Phoenix, 2nd Avenue and Roosevelt. It was a kind of an old house, had a big front porch. I've driven by there several times too. I think they're kind of renovating the place now. I don't know, but
the garage was changed just within the last year.
So, but we would always eat out, sitting on the big wooden front porch. We just would lay out mats and we'd sit there and eat together. And we didn't have much money, so sometimes we'd go to the grocery stores and we'd buy like the old second, the food that they were giving away kind of thing, it was like marked down to me. And there was like one guy who had a job, who sort of supported the whole ashram. And people kind of made fun of him because he wasn't so into it, he was working. So,
Making fun of him for bringing in the
Yeah,
money.
yeah, it was crazy. But but then at some point, Babadon says to me, well, okay, so well then how I got my name. That's a good story. So one day, and people got their names.
Right, and just to get perspective for everyone listening, so in this little ashram, which is a house, so you're saying the men's quarters is one area, the women's, the Shakti rooms in another. There's a space for like yoga teacher training, so
Yeah.
people are coming in. This is kind of a major hub where kind of teacher trainings are happening, and because Babadon's a creative, innovative, fun teacher, this is like a little happening spot for new yogis. Okay.
Right,
And
right.
my dad's
Yeah.
there and my mom's there at this time. And then Baba John is there. Okay, so keep going.
Yeah. Okay, so one day he said, okay, so I'm just going to give people some names just for fun. He said, and he just said, okay, so he started with the money. He said, you're Govinde, Mukande, Udhare, Akare, Hari, and Kare, Nirame, Akame. And then for some reason he said to me, he said, and you're Bibi Bhani. And I can't and then I know he gave also your dad Medipiare. I don't know if I could, and at that time, I'm not sure if it was the same time or not, but that was a shabad that was Vikram Singh was playing a lot at the time, Medipiare. And so he came up with that as a name for your dad, Medipiare, which means my beloved. So
fascinating. My mom tells me a different story that she chose that name. And then later he got the name. But anyways, that's her story to tell. So fascinating to hear that Babadon.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. But so anyway, those, after that, some people were like, it was supposed to be just a temporary thing. It wasn't like this is your name. It was kind of like, maybe she was given the name first. I don't know, but it was just like a little exercise. But then afterwards, some people kind of thought, well, I kind of like that name, and I think that your mom and myself kind of felt like, well, I think I'll keep that name. so that's kind of how we got our names. And then he was given a different name eventually of Guru Jagat. And
you mean Yogi Bhajan came in and started renaming people?
Yeah. Then it was finally, at some point it was like, well, Yogi Bhajan's the only one who can give names. But in the early days it was kind of like, well, if Yogi Bhajan could do it, I can do it. I can. The teachers who were his teachers were just kind of emulating him and doing what he did, and he was giving names, so they were giving names, and
And to give perspective, they were also marrying people, coupling
Right.
people, right? So they were setting people up for marriages, giving names, kind of like you said, and emulating that. So like Babadon and Ganga, right?
Pungit.
Pungit. Sorry,
Pungit.
thank you. Pungit and Babadon were like running the Phoenix teacher training, kind of doing that kind of Yogi Bhajan role until Yogi Bhajan came in and kind of took over these roles a little, like when it got more specialized, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Then he was given the name Guru Jagat eventually, and some of our names that Babadon or Guru Jagat had given, we checked with Yogi Bhajan about it. Is that okay to keep that name? Is that all right? And my name was, he said, yeah, Bibi Bhani's fine for you. And then some of the others were changed or modified a bit. So anyway, so pretty soon Babadon says to me, well, you know what, you're the perfect Shakti, and I think it's time you got married. And he said go into the Shakti room and don't come out till you decide who you want to marry. I'm like, and there was like, like 4 guys in the ashram, and I'm like, oh no, I don't. So I think somehow I got out of that one, But then there was this thing of like, the women were supposed to serve the man. And so you were supposed to give you were assigned to someone to serve. So, you would give them a foot massage, and you would take them yogi tea. And I don't think it was too reciprocal. I think it was mostly the woman to the man kind of thing, you know.
From what I heard, that was definitely what it was. My mom describes
yeah,
nightly foot massages
right,
and like
yeah, you give it to
serving
the
my
man.
dad before being
Yeah.
coupled.
Mhm. Yeah, so first I was put with this guy who was Baba Mark at the time. And then somehow it was switched to me being with Baba John. And so he seemed like a nice enough guy. He was this little guy. I mean, I was like 20, he was like 21. We were kids, and 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 so eventually Babadon says, well, go tell him that you want to marry him, that you're ready to get married. And I kind of idolized Babadon. I mean, he, more than YB at that point, he was my teacher, and I felt like, what he said was true, and I wanted to be part of the
In crowd.
to belong, you sign on to the program, you kind of have to do what's expected, I guess. So he said, well, go tell him you want to get married. Go tell him you're ready to get married. And I'm like, oh, so I went up and I said, okay, well, I guess maybe we should get married. And he's like, well, it doesn't really matter who you're married. You're just marrying God.
Oh, Lord. It sounds like Baba today. Not much has changed.
Anyway, but so we ended up getting engaged, and we had to have YB's approval to get engaged. So we got engaged, but then, well, we weren't married yet. But Babadon said, well, you need to go to Tempe because the people who were there, Satkatar Singh and Kar, were moving to Amsterdam. They had been told to go to Amsterdam to start an ashram. So you need to go take over this little Tempe ashram. So we moved to this little apartment in Tempe where they had lived. And we stayed there, I guess. And then we went to winter solstice together.
Mm.
Babadon was into the like videotaping stuff before that was a big thing. And so he told Baba John, Baba, to go and videotape winter solstice. So we got to go to winter solstice to do that. It was kind of like our assignment to videotape what was going on there. So we went there together, and then we came back, and I guess we had been told that we were going to get married at summer solstice. But at this point, our friends, who was Baba Mark at the time, and Daya, we called her Daya, but Daya, I think it's like the real pronunciation, but she was Daya Jyoti was how he said her name. But they had decided to get married, and he and Baba Mark, Baba John, whatever I call them, they had been all buddies from Iowa. And so we decided that, well, we should get married together. And we were like, well, why wait? We should get married sooner and get married in Phoenix. So we had a double wedding. This was like the first Sikh wedding, American Sikh wedding in Phoenix. And they had like a newspaper article about it and everything. And we got married in the backyard of one of the, some students who had a wealthy family, and it was a beautiful backyard. And so we got married there. And so we ended up going back to Tempe, but well, just a little side. I mean, the whole thing about marriage. As I said, I hadn't wanted to get married before, but the idea that you could be with someone and it would just be, you didn't have to get involved in like all the emotional stuff of relationships, which I had experienced before, and and all emotional pain and this and that you go through in relationships. If you don't have that emotional attachment to a person, then, you can avoid all that, right? If you're not really in love, you don't have to worry about all that stuff. You're just fulfilling a mission together as partners and working for, to raise the consciousness of humanity, kind of thing. Yeah.
The ultimate bypass, right?
Right. Yeah. So that was how it was portrayed, and that's kind of how I saw it. And it's like, okay, I'll sign on for this. So we went back to Tempe, but very shortly afterwards, I became very homesick for Phoenix and the people there and Babadon, and I think I told him that. I went back and said, I'm not happy. I don't know. And so at the time, Suri Karkar, and Himmet was she had her little baby Himmet at the time, Himmet Kar, and Himmet's dad, Mardana, his name was Michael, I think Babadon named him Mardana. He came to visit, and he was a musician, and Babadon had him write some kind of musical, like, Babadon. So some kind of a musical about higher consciousness and this and that. So he said, well, come back and be in this musical, come and stay with you, and I said, yeah, I'm in for that. So I got to go back and do that, and kind of escape the humdrum of being married. So that was, a little reprieve. And I guess we eventually went to another solstice, and time went on. We ended up back in Phoenix when they moved to the big ashram on McDowell Road, which was the huge big building that had the big paintings in front. I don't know if you remember that, but
no, I still wasn't born yet, but I like giving the sequential location.
Yeah. Anyway, right. Yeah. So that's where your parents were married. But it was a big office building that somehow they got a hold of. And so we moved back there, and they kept having more, these teacher training courses there. And, eventually they opened the Golden Temple restaurant in Tempe. And that was a big thing, that was a thing for everybody to work at. And so, I became a worker at the restaurant in Tempe. And I would cook specials and soups, and then they also had this little stage in the middle, so I would help them do some entertainment, sing and play the guitar at nighttime to entertain the guests. And I started doing a little bit of recording at the time. I'm not sure the exact time, but I did an early recording called "The Gift to Be Simple," which had some songs and some chants and things on it. And then somehow I think Yogi Bhajan asked me to record the Japji. Now, when we moved to the new ashram, we had our first gurdwara. It was down in the basement of the ashram, of the building, but they set it up, so it was pretty nice. And I would go down there, and I would just kind of sit in front of the Sri Guru Granth Sahib with my guitar, which was, I'm sure, not really kosher, but no one knew back then. And I would just kind of sing, just play my guitar and sing the words. It was just kind of a flow. And that's how I did the Japji too, the Japji from Peace Lagoon. I just would kind of sing, and it wasn't like a set melody. It was just kind of a flow of music and words. And so for some reason, Yogi Bhajan wanted me to record that, so I made an early recording of the Japji from that. And so let's see, Golden Temple, worked there for a while, but then eventually I got pregnant, and that was kind of a relief, because I was getting a little tired of working at the restaurant, and when you're pregnant, you got to not stop working at the restaurant. So yeah. We had eventually had moved to another little place called there was a little health food store called the Goose Granary. And there was a little house next to it where Jew and Karg and Singh lived, and their two children at the time, Satvir and Sarvarta. And so we moved in with them, and that's where our son, Bibi Sangeet, was born. And around the same time as Bibi Kiran, your brother, and there's like four, well, also Satpurkar at the time,
Narayan.
Narayan, and then Adi Singh and Adhikar, they weren't there, but they showed up a little later. But they had
Kirpal.
we wanted to have home births, so we didn't want to go to the hospital. That was the thing. We wanted to have a home birth. So it turned out that Dr. Allen, who ended up in LA, but when I had gone to after summer solstice with, he was in Phoenix doing some kind of residency at this place called the ARE Clinic. And so we kind of nabbed him to be our doctor for our home births. And Sri Karkar had been studying midwifery, so she was there too, but she wasn't a licensed midwife yet, but she was very helpful. So we had our home births, and luckily everything turned out well, okay. And then we had this great little program where, like, the four of us, your mom, myself, Adhikar, who had shown up with Kirpal, and they were about the same age, and Sapurkar and Narayan. So we kind of would share. We had a little program where two of us would watch the babies, and the other two could have some time off, and we'd feed them almond milk if they missed a breastfeeding, and so it was a nice real community little thing. We kind of had this family thing where we could share with the taking care of the babies and all that.
Yeah, and anybody who's a mother or has been around motherhood knows that, to be sharing time where you're pregnant at the same time as other women, and then the sons being born, all being the same ages, this is quite significant and speaks to the nature of what felt so supportive in community.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so it was that was a nice time. I enjoyed being mother, and but then shortly Baba decided he was going to start a automotive garage.
This is your husband at the time,
Babadon. He was at that time, he was given the name Baba Siri Das, but then Yogi Bhajan said it was Baba Siri Singh, so I guess it was Baba Siri Singh at that point.
Got it.
So
is Babadon still in the ashram at this point?
Yeah.
Okay, so keep going.
Okay, so we moved to farther up McDowell Road in this automotive garage. There was a house behind, and he was running this automotive garage thing, fixing cars, jack of all trades. So we lived there in the back, and then also Guru Mantar Singh and Guru Mantar Kaur, that was their name at the time. Now she is now Saram Kaur, and but they had a son, Biddy Pitty, who you interviewed, and he was a baby at the time, and so we lived together with them. And at that time, then for some reason I was told, I think this was maybe the beginning of kind of the children's ashram phase, where people were sent to Phoenix the kids were sent to Phoenix to be in children's ashrams. But I was told I was supposed to take care of this little boy who was just maybe a year old. And somehow he was supposed to not be with his parents, and I was told I was supposed to take care of him. So, I didn't really like it. I don't think I was a very good caretaker for him. I don't think it lasted very long, but somebody, I had my own little baby who was like just a few months old, and I was supposed to take care of this other kid, it's like, what? So,
wow.
That was the thing that, that happened. You were told, well, you're supposed to, take care of someone else's kid. So,
and there was just no space to say no, because it was looked at as a gift, as an honor to do this or something.
I guess, it was just something you were supposed to do, So anyway, that was but I don't think it lasted for all that long. But anyway, after that, Babadon told us, it was probably Rajagit at that point, but he said, well, you guys should go start a country ashram. And this was, I think it is also around the time when maybe the Carefree Ashram and I don't know, maybe that was later, but anyway, he told us we should start a country ashram. I had come into some money through a trust fund. And so we went up north to look for some property. So we found this place in Heber, this 10 acres of property that was lovely, and used the money from my trust fund to buy this property. And moved up there this was in 1975. Bibi Bhani was not a year old yet. And we moved up there. We took the Sajiwan Singh, who had arrived, the Sajiwan family had arrived with a teepee in the backyard of the ashram. So we took their teepee to sit up there. And we lived in the teepee while we were building the house. Baba was a great, carpenter, so we built this house, and there was another couple that the Sapurks kind of moved up there too, but we were eventually. I think we were there by ourselves for a while, but so we lived in a little house. It was rough, we didn't have electricity, we didn't have running water, we didn't have anything. It's a country ashram. People would come up once in a while to visit, a little bit in the summer, but then the winter came, and it was kind of hard. I think we went back east to visit my mother for a while during the winter, and then came back. We got in an accident, the truck, and our truck got totaled, and we had to hitchhike around, and so things.
All with a little baby.
Yeah. And then sometimes he would go to Phoenix to do something, sell something, or do something, and I'd be left there by myself because we actually had goats up there that we were milking, and so I had to stay and milk the goats, and so I'd be left there by myself with the baby, no phone. But actually, I think the Guttamantas actually moved up a little bit. They lived there for a little while. They had the ones that brought the goats, but it didn't live very long. Anyway, we eventually the camps were started, I think, during the summer, but after I think about the second winter, I had pretty much kind of had it. I felt isolated. I felt depressed. I was, I just didn't want to be in there anymore. So I decided I was going back down to Phoenix. I took a bus down myself, and with my baby, with Sangeet, and then I guess Baba, I think I had some person drive me to Payson, and Baba, he came later, but I was like, oh, I'm done with this. So we went to Phoenix. But meanwhile, while we had been gone, Babadon or Jugajugit he had moved people while we'd gone. I think this is when the Carefree Ashram, the Tempe Ashram started. He had kind of been moving people out away, because I think he was feeling like he was not probably wanting to stay in and wanted to just kind of get people out and away from what was going on with him. So he had left, and Gurliv Singh and Gurliv Kaur had been sent from LA to take over the Phoenix Ashram. And when we got back there, that was what was happening, and Babadon was gone.
So just to pause on that, just to give the listeners perspective, from my understanding, right? Babadon and his wife again, Punget. She was like an Israeli woman, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they were the ones that had been like running the teacher training, running the community for a long time. And as things were getting more and more formalized, I think they were less interested in being a part as that was happening. So Yogi Bhajan and systems were being created.
I believe
they decided to keep it moving. So now Gurlivs come in and are sent in as leadership to run Phoenix.
Yes,
Because
yes.
Phoenix is a major hub at this point.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right. At this point, there was the ashram was on, the big ashram had been abandoned, and there was a smaller house on Alvarado Road, which was the ashram. And Gurliv, I mean, he was a great language teacher. I learned Gurmukhi from him. He was great at languages. That was his thing, was languages. So he taught everyone Gurmukhi. But other than that, I don't think he was so into wanting to really run things. He kind of did it because he was told to. So we were there for a while. At some point, I developed a feelings for another man, because I had been discontented with my marriage for a while, not feeling that it was something I was very happy in, and developed feelings for someone else. That was not something that was really you could do. Eventually it was, I think Baba found out about it somehow, and then it was never like a consummated affair or anything, but it was just kind of a thing that I had going on, and it was Yogi Bhajan somehow told me to come to LA. This is the thing, like you go to LA when and get fixed.
So there wasn't an actual like physical affair happening, but you started having energy, feelings, and there was obvious something happening there. Baba finds out, and then you kind of get called to LA so you can get
Okay. I think like Krishna Kar had come at one point and talked to him, and then somehow. So anyway, I was told to come to LA.
So, and just to pause one more time, that was kind of the formality here, listeners, is like if there was an issue, right? So my mom had an issue with something, then Krishna would come and try to smooth things out in the area. Yeah. She was kind of the first go-to overseer of our region. And then if that quote didn't work, then you would get called to LA to be talked to by the man. So go ahead.
Right. Yeah, so that's... so I ended up in LA. I think I stayed at the Sri Bibi Bhani Ashram. I was there at that time. And Yogi Bhajan told me to put his poetry to music. That was my assignment. He'd been writing poetry, and so I was supposed to be working on putting his poetry to music. Then eventually I guess when I was there for a little while, and then there was a trip to India. So I was asked to accompany him on a trip to India. So this was late 70s still, I believe, and 77, 78 maybe. And so I went to India with a group with him. That was interesting. Of course, we didn't really know what was going on, because everyone was speaking Punjabi, and we were kind of like he was showing us off as, oh, look at these Americans, I've turned these Americans into Sikhs, and he'd be going and talking at these places or these people's houses and jabbering in Punjabi, and of course we had no idea what he was saying and what people were saying. I mean, people were nice to us and stuff, but it was kind of a tour. We went around to different places, and that was it was interesting. But it was a good perspective to get to see the Indian Sikhs and people, how they lived and how it was different than the American version. But
Now, where's your baby? You have Guru Sangeet with you this whole time?
He was back in Phoenix.
So when you got called to LA, you left him behind.
Yeah, he was maybe 3 or 4 at this time. Yeah, about 4 maybe. Yeah, so he was He stayed in Phoenix, yeah. Yeah, eventually came back to Phoenix, and let's see.
Can I pause you for a second? I want to get some clarity on what you're saying. So this energy starts happening with another person. You haven't been fulfilled in your marriage basically since you started, because you weren't really marrying each other. You were marrying God, and everything should be non-emotional and non-connected. So suddenly that ends up being a harsh reality. And you're an emotional human, so you start making some feelings. Yogi Bhajan calls you to LA, but then it doesn't sound like any of that's addressed. He just kind of puts you on his poetry and then has you travel with him. Is there anything ever talked to you directly about this scenario, or just you eventually end up back in Phoenix?
I think he may have talked to me some, but it wasn't anything. It was always something. It was always my problem. It was like at one point he told me, "Oh, you have a sex resentment," whatever that means. And there was something about, "Oh, my mother, this or that," but it never.
He's gaslighting you. Okay, so what else?
Yeah.
And he was also like making you wrong in other ways in terms of communicating that you're the problem here.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean that. You're married. You're married. This is your commitment. You're. That was what I committed to, and so you're not. Other things were not okay. Married for life, no divorce, all that. So, yeah. I'm going to pause for a moment to turn off my AC. It's getting a little too cold. Right.
Yeah, so what I want to just pause and just say is that the frame up that you've given us so far is that in these early days, there was this ethos already created that, the ultimate thing is make sure you're married and you have a family, and the women should serve the men, and the devotion of being a good wife. And like all of this was a part of that foundational setup with Babadon, which was really just a mimicking leadership role that Yogi Bhajan was doing. And then when Babadon leaves, YB's already sending in another leader. And so in this setup of your marriage, of this kind of like non-passionate marriage, this was already happening from the beginning. And then what I'm hearing you say is that the only real communication you got in direct relationship to this was, it's your problem. You're not being a good enough wife. You're not doing the things you need, which is the same message my mom got when my dad was cheating around, is that she wasn't good enough, and why he was doing that was her fault. So this became a part of the normal ethos. When you went to see YB, the woman would be the one at fault, and then the men had a different category.
Yeah.
Okay, so as long as we're clear. So you end up back in Phoenix.
Yeah, so okay, so back in Phoenix, and let's see, get my timeline straight here. Look at my notes here. Let's see. Well, eventually, I remember he told me to go on tour to. I mean, he kept telling. Oh, I know. Okay, this is a backtrack to Heber. Okay, so after being Heber, and deciding to leave Heber, and there were still continuations with summer camps and things there for a number of years, but we didn't live there full time after a couple of years. But I had told, when I remember YB was visiting Phoenix one time, and we were talking about Heber, and I told him that I wanted to just donate the property to Sikh Dharma. So, wow. So he, that was arranged, and looking back on it, I think that's probably shouldn't have done that, but at the time it was like, well, I didn't want to be there anymore, and it seemed like, why not? It's that was just let 3HO and Sikh Dharma take over. And at the time, he also said to me, he said, well, okay, well, that's good. Then eventually we can sell the property and we can use the money to send you on tour to do music. And, as he said, yeah, we'll use the money to do that. So, I know. So, that was the thing. I mean, just the music thing, he kept kind of pushing me that this is your thing, you need to do your music. And I guess I never felt really totally aligned with it. I mean, I enjoyed doing the music at first. I did some recordings and things, but it seemed like after the initial inspiration, it started to kind of change. More people were getting into it. I started to feel like, well, I'm not as good as this person, as good as that person, and I never liked really performing in Solstice or places like that. I didn't feel comfortable in doing that type of thing. So it was, but in a way, I felt like I kind of been pigeonholed as this is your role. And in a way, I think looking back on it, I think that that's what he did. He kind of compartmentalized people into their role of what they're supposed to do. The musicians, they're supposed to go on tour and promote and spread my brand. Basically that's what he wanted us to do. Go spread the brand, spread the 3HO brand. And promote me, and the songs that people wrote that often even had he said, well, the songs are what is going to carry us forward and all that, and the legacy, and people would write songs that mentioned him, almost in the same light as the Sikh gurus. And of course later we were told that, you shouldn't really say that, but it was people, there were songs to that effect. And I think that the whole music thing was in a way kind of another way of just promoting himself. Not so much the people themselves,
and creating another section of specialness, right? That also created a self-perpetuating promotional material, as you're saying. That's a really interesting. Yeah. I've never thought about that, but that makes so much sense.
Yeah. So, but anyway, he told me in 1985, I believe. We were in Tucson at the Tantra course. And so he said, okay, well, now it's time for you to go on tour. And he said, get a jetta together in Phoenix and go on tour. Go on tour to Vancouver. I don't know if he told us that, but somehow we decided to go to Vancouver. And so we got together several people. I think there were like 4 or 5 women, and we had a tabla player, and we knew our few little shubbeds, and we took off in a couple of cars and drove up through California and up to Vancouver, and stayed at the ashram there with the garage car, and I guess Hari Singh, and they kind of took us around to some of the gurdwaras, and we performed our little kirtan, and it was it was kind of fun, but I didn't enjoy it all that much. by the end I was like, I'm really tired of this, and
again you're leaving your son back home, right?
Yeah. And well, at that point he was already in India, so I guess I probably kind of skipped the part where he went to India. I'll have to go back and backtrack on that. but yeah, so we did that, and I don't know, by the end I was kind of feeling like, we were just like so amateurish, and I'd like to work with someone who's like a little more skilled, because I was, and somehow Yogi Bhajan, after I got back, I talked to him, and he says, well, you just want to be the star. And I'm like, what? So I don't know. We didn't really do stuff after that, and I tried kind of working with some other people. I tried working with Sakutarkar, and we did some things together, but it wasn't a real good fit. But anyway, that was my tour. That was a tour, my one and only tour. And yes. Meanwhile, Guru Sangeet, our son, had gone to India in 1981.
Oh.
The first child to go to India was Satbir Singh, from Phoenix. He was a few years old, a couple years older than Guru Sangeet, and he was always kind of his big brother, and he always looked up to Satbir. And so after Satbir went, Guru Sangeet's like, I want to go too, because Satbir went. So we didn't know anything about it. It's like we were told this is what to do with the kids, send them to India. So it's like, okay. So off he went to India, a little 7-year-old boy.
He was 7.
7-year-olds.
I remember that Gurdwara where all the kids were standing up there and they put those orange
the saropas,
around their neck.
But we did go to visit him several times. Each year he came back, and every year he would say he didn't want to go back, and then when we take him to YB, and YB said, "Oh, you have to go back." It was crazy.
And meanwhile, like in your marriage, you just are just making it work, but it's not necessarily like there's
things are kind of I mean, we're kind of making it work, and eventually we decided, we were thinking, well, maybe we should have another child, and this was quite a few years later, because Guru Sangeet was already, he was like 13 when Bibi Bhani was born. And so we decided, maybe it's time for another child. And I took a little while to actually get pregnant. And then so I was pregnant with our daughter, Bibi Bhani, and she was born in 1987.
I was going to say, I think she's 10 years younger than me.
Yeah.
Because it was a while longer. And I remember your guys' house was across the street from ours.
Yeah. So we had moved into a house. We lived kind of in the main ashram for a while. And then we moved into a remodeled house across the street. Now, in Phoenix, there was the big ashram we had moved to in about 1981, I think, on Oak Street. And then people began buying homes, people or the ashram property, some people privately, some people through the ashram, and it was kind of convoluted of who owned what. But there were a bunch of houses in the area that people lived in, so it was kind of like a whole community of people, of houses, and the main ashram is a hub.
So that made our ashram was like a Baptist church that got converted, right? And then, and then that neighborhood, was kind of like low income Latino neighborhood, right? Hispanic neighborhood, and so because we had so many construction workers in our community, we could flip those homes. Yes.
Okay, I guess.
I mean, that's what like Pat Perk and Baba Siri saying. They were like a lot of the people that were like making these things. Like livable homes, no?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because our home where Bibi Bhani was born had been a duplex, and it was remodeled to be a single family house. So that was a really nice house for us. It was like our first. Well, we lived in a bunch of places, but it was our first big house. So anyway, she was born. I mean, things were not great between us at the time. I remember when it was my 120th day celebration, and we were having a Gurdwara, and I was all into getting the Gurdwara ready, and he was sitting there watching football on TV or something. I was kind of like, come on, yeah. And so, but we had Bibi Bhani, and that was our sweet little daughter, but things from there, he was kind of going through a transition with his work and wanting to start another business, and I think kind of a midlife crisis type of thing. And he was kind of going out and doing other things, and seemed like we were sort of growing apart. And so, it wasn't, I just was feeling like, it's time to kind of end this. And so I guess I talked to Yogi Bhajan about it, and I told him what was going on, and he said, well, he said he'd actually come and talk to Baba, and he said I'll come, I'll come to Phoenix and I'll talk to him. And so he,
is Baba Siri Singh already having affairs at this point?
Well, I don't know. I mean, he's out doing things, and staying out all night sometimes and doing other stuff. So I'm not sure what's going on, but
Okay.
And so so Yogi Bhajan did come at one point, and he I guess he talked to him. So then afterwards, when I talked to Yogi Bhajan, he said, yes, I talked to him. Yeah, he's fine. Don't worry. He's okay. And I was like, really? And so I don't know. It pretty much decided that, it was time to move on, and things were not going to work out. And so
this is the year. This is after Guru Bani's born, and this is 1990.
A little earlier, I guess. When she was born in 87, so probably close, maybe late 80s, early 90s. Yeah,
okay.
Right around then. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So eventually, I think, I put his things outside and said I'm back, and he found another place in the neighborhood, and he had mentioned Gursangeet. I think he was back from India at this point, because he had finished school, and he had moved to California, and so Baba eventually moved to California with Gursangeet. But anyway, I went to Espanola again to talk to YB and tell him that I really wanted to get divorced. And so I told him, I'm finished with the marriage, and he's, even though he said, I wasn't supposed to get divorced, I said, I'm really, I'm going to do it. And so he said, well, okay, well, then now you can go on tour and do your music thing. and then he I was, in the room with him at the ranch, and he pulled me into him, and he put his mouth on my neck and kind of sucked on my neck or something, and then, it was like, what? So, it was just kind of a momentary thing, but, I mean, truthfully, I didn't think a whole lot of it at the time. I was like, okay, well, but now it's kind of, I feel like, well, he was saying, okay, now I can put my mark on you or something, so I don't know.
It's just so interesting, Bibi Bhani. I want to pause and just say, I'm sure there's so many more things you'll remember as time goes on, but these interactions where you had this closeness with YB, and he kept putting you out to the on tour thing, and his language, as much as we haven't heard that much, the ones you've shared, built you up, tore you down, built you up, tore you down. And it's kind of this, what I'm hearing about it is it's kind of like this formula of grooming, where it's like you have nothing left, like you're being told you're something, and then you're actually insulted for attempting the thing that he suggested. And then you're re-brought up, and then you're insulted for being the one that's wrong, when all you're expressing is human needs of emotional connection and passion. And so, again, it's like it's convoluted, and it's hard to really pull apart. But as memories come forward, we start to see what was there all along, but we never really could see or name.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess there's another thing that I kind of left out was that I had spent time in LA at the estate during the 80s too, the early 80s. And my second sabbatical to LA. When things, it kind of like a repeat of the first cycle, but this was a second cycle. And so he said, well, come and stay with my family, see what a real family is like. Oh. The estate, BBG lives there. Premka was still there. Then, it's this little house, the estate, this house on First Road. and then some of the other secretaries, there's like a back house where some of the other secretaries lived. And I slept on the couch and was there, I was told to be his daughter's, Kamaljit's, 40-day Davidar when she had her child. I helped take care of her after she had her baby, and I worked at Golden Temple during that time. But I could at that point I could kind of see the whole secretary thing going on, but I couldn't see it. It's like, I was right there. They thought, well, I've got night duty tonight, and see them doing their thing. But I guess I was just so wrapped up in my own dramas and traumas that I wasn't seeing that what was going on right under my nose. It's like,
and also within an ethos that's minimizing your dramas and traumas, making them feel like that you're making it up, you're making it worse, as opposed to natural sensations of humanity to want to be in partnerships that's loving, or natural things that were then reframed to make the woman feel like it's her duty to do more, to sacrifice more, to offer more. And it just sounds like that's just like the recurring theme that allowed for more and more blindness of what was happening.
Yeah. So, that time was kind of, a time when I was able to kind of see some of the dynamics of things that were happening in the LA at that time with the staff and all that. But like I said, I wasn't totally aware of what was going on. But there would be the thing of everybody like jumping to go to the airport when he was going somewhere, or he was coming back from somewhere, and I'd be told, oh, get in the car with this person and drive to the airport, and then we'd all sit at the airport with him, and he'd say things at the airport to people, and maybe he would say something to you, and maybe he'd change somebody's life by saying, oh, you marry this person, when so the airport interactions were like a big deal, so
wow.
Trooping in with our white clothes and all that. So it was a kind of a circus.
Yeah, and I want to go back to you communicating early that you weren't happy in your marriage, and yet it was you needed to kind of stick with it. But then as things got worse, and let's say Baba started doing whatever, it's not, Yogi Bhajan said, yeah, I've talked to him, but it's not like anything changed. And that was a similar story. Like if my mom said, hey, this is what Lee's doing, and then Yogi Bhajan talks to him, but nothing's changed. So enough of that over and over again eventually compounded, and you just decided, okay, we're going to end this marriage. By that many years later, you decided, I'm done here. I'm not going to keep this up. And I want to point out to listeners what was happening in Phoenix at that time, because I think it is a bit significant. The community had really had a lot of people coming in. We had the 4-plex, we had the 8-plex, we had a children's ashram. We had houses all around where the main hub of the ashram was. So it was a bit of a unique community where we had Thanksgiving together and community gatherings and karma yoga. And So lots of people would come in and out through our ashram, yes?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
you're also giving a long history of like couples that raise their families together or babies together. It's like this level of camaraderie and community. And in the later years, do you remember the Men's Crisis Center?
Mm-hmm.
So do you want to tell listeners what this was?
Okay. Well, yeah, there was one man who had he was kind of a single bachelor at that point. I guess he and his wife had divorced a while ago. And he had a place where all the guys would go over and watch football games. That's how it started. On Sunday afternoon or whatever. And I mean, I think for a while they were coming to our house, and I didn't like that, so they ended up moving over there.
That's what made me think about it, because when you said on your 120th day,
in my house.
Yeah, Bob was watching football, and I was like, oh yeah, that's what they all did. They all got together and watched football. I remember this.
Yeah, so it was, and then so that was kind of a thing, I mean, if that's what they wanted to do, that was fine. So it wasn't my house.
Yeah, I guess what I want to point out about it is that as the years went on, if there was infidelity or if there was unhappiness of a woman in their marriage and the woman talked to whoever was in charge and then YB, nothing actually changed. There wasn't a culture where men changed and it became better. It was always back on the woman. So this Men's Crisis Center literally became a thing in our community. I remember it around 1990-ish because I think I was old enough to discover what it was. But the point is, it was like the hangout place for the men to get away from their neurotic wives. And it was kind of this persona, And it was just the guys hanging out and watching football, but then it became more than that, It was, just this, again, I remember, my dad going there, and then when I got a little old enough, sometimes I got to go, but like you wanted to be a part of it. And I'm pointing this out because once again, it perpetuates the ethos that it's the women that are neurotic. It's the women that are not saving the marriage. It's the women that are not doing the thing, whether it's bringing sex or doing the things to make sure that your husband doesn't cheat. And this is a long history of it building to this. And then, the single man's house, all the guys would go hang out there and watch football and suck nitrous or something.
Yeah, right. Oh, that was the thing.
Yeah, they would have this tank and they would actually inhale night. It was like, in a community over time of not doing drugs and then finding interesting creative ways to integrate their drug use.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah, but I mean.
But I just wanted to point. Yeah, I wanted to point out that this kind of is a setup for the erratic behavior that you were seeing with Baba Siri Singh, right? That whatever the choices he was making, which I don't know, and that's his story, it just still reflects this kind of like something else was taking place. It was no longer this family entity where the focus was.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, I like you said, it's his story, but I feel that it was, a lot of it was just my, feeling of discontentment, and I needed to act on that. But yeah, no, like counseling was ever really discussed or anything like that. I don't know, but okay. So eventually I did get divorced. I think the divorce wasn't an actual divorce for a couple of years, but we were separated. He moved on, he moved away, and now I was kind of on my own. And, after that same conversation with Yogi Bhajan in Espanola, he said, well, I will always take care of you. And, have Guru Kar, who was kind of, in charge of things in Phoenix at the time, send your financial statement to me every month to let me know how you're doing and all this. But still, I mean, how is I supposed to like go out and tour and be a musician if I had a little baby girl and I need to support myself? So I was like, no, I'm not doing that. So I ended up becoming I started kind of working at the Khalsa. We had a Khalsa Montessori school in Phoenix for many years, since the very beginning of the ashram started,
Mm-hmm.
and it had grown into quite a well-known school in the whole city. It had a good reputation as a school, and it kept expanding. And so I had started kind of working there part-time when she was a baby, and I decided that I would pursue that and become a Montessori teacher. So I took training in Colorado, same training that Cutting had been the first one. She went to Boulder and she took the Montessori toddler training, and she came back and she was Bibi Bhani's toddler teacher when she was a baby, and I then I think State Hardcar and Audi Car also took the training, and I decided I would do it. It would be a good way to me to support myself. I had been kind of working at the school just as an assistant, but I would, if I took the training, I could be more, make a better income and have more responsibility. So I did that. I became the head of one of the toddler programs that they had at the school for several years, and that was actually it's kind of a good time. I felt like I was becoming more independent. I'd never really been on my own. I mean, I'd gone to college for a year, then I got into 3HL, got married, and I had never really supported myself. Hadn't continued my education. So it was a time when I kind of felt like I was sort of coming into my own more, and like, yeah, I can do this. I can take care of myself and take care of my daughter, and that was a fairly good period. But then after a few years, I decided I wanted to take the next level of training, the preschool training, and so I went back and did that training, and then I had to come and do an internship with a teacher for my year after my training, and that did not go well at all. the person that I was like a brand new teacher at the school who they just hired, who didn't have much experience, and somehow I had to be with her, and I didn't like her, she didn't like me, and it was just an all-around bad year. And so after that, I was kind of like, no, I'm kind of done with this. Bibi Bhani she was at the elementary at the time, and she didn't want to continue with Khalsa either, so she was going to go on to public school. So we both kind of transitioned out of Khalsa school at that point. And so that summer, so backtrack a little. In 1996, I had taken the very first Master's Touch teacher training in New Mexico. That was, the original seminal teacher training course, level 1 teacher training course. And I had gone to get, certified as a Kundalini Yoga teacher. And so I think I've been teaching a little bit more since then, teaching yoga. And that summer, after the summer solstice, after that year of my internship, which I didn't like, I had to stay and run one of the transition programs of the toddlers transitioning to the primary, and so I didn't make it to solstice. So all these other teachers had asked me if they would teach. I would teach their yoga classes while they were at solstice. So I was like, yeah, sure. So I took all these yoga classes, and I was like, wow, I really love teaching, and this is so great, and I think I want to do this instead of doing Montessori. So I went to ladies camp, I think, for a week, and I just kind of felt like I just had this revelation of like, yeah, this is what I have to do, and I totally go back into my sadhana, getting up at 3 a.m. every morning and doing gung ho, and I ended up, finding some classes to teach, and it's kind of turned into a full-time thing eventually, where I was able to just support myself pretty well by teaching at various fitness places, and I worked at some community colleges, and then I wanted to teach prenatal yoga, so I went and took some training with your book and started teaching pregnancy yoga, and then I started Bibi yoga, and then I was eventually started teaching kids yoga at the Khalsa school again, and so I had kind of a variety of classes that I was teaching and enjoyed that. Actually, I did go, and at one point, after my first couple years of teaching, I think, I was invited to come and teach at a master's touch in New Mexico to teach the mantra and sound module of the teacher training there at the master's touch. I wasn't like an official teacher trainer, but I was able to, you could kind of sign up as a specialty trainer, for some particular type of module. So somehow they invited me to do that, and so I decided to go do that, and it was interesting because my only experience with the teacher training in Phoenix, I had seen like Hari Simran Singh and Satratnakar had done our teacher training, and when they brought in like other teachers, they would bring in like Sanadam sometimes to do the mantra and sound, or they bring your Prem to do the postures, and they were like these visiting celebrities, they pick them up and they kind of wine them and dine them, and like here, our special celebrity guest teacher is coming. And so I kind of was thinking, oh yeah, I'm gonna get a special celebrity guest teacher. So so I was trying to make arrangements to go do this thing, and I said, well, is someone going to meet me at the airport? I said, no. You can make your own way there. Well, do I get paid for this? No. Well, I'm giving up my income of the classes that I usually teach to go do that. No, you're part of the team. You got to do this as part of the team, and we're all in this together, and we're just doing this for Seva. And so I was like, okay, I didn't know. I guess that's the way it's done. So I had to make my way from Albuquerque to Abiquiu, where it was, and get there, and and I was kind of overwhelmed. I was like, whoa, I've never done anything like this before, and here I was trying to like regurgitate this stuff from the teacher training manual of what mantra and sound is, and putting as many mantras in between as I could, and singing. But I don't think I did that great, but Harikara was in charge of it. She was like, well, you did okay, but I didn't think they were going to invite me back. But I did. I did end up selling a bunch of my CDs, which kind of paid for my trip, so that was okay. But that was kind of my thing with the teacher training. I did a couple of other teacher training of mantra and sound modules, I think in Tucson a couple times, and in a couple in Phoenix maybe, but I just didn't feel super comfortable with that. And then they were starting all the level 2 stuff, and I just was like, why are they charging all this money for these level 2 courses? Why do you have to pay thousands of dollars to learn this stuff that like Yogi Bhajan taught us, for free years ago, and they're just repackaging it and trying to make a bunch of money on it. And we're like, what's this about? And I didn't really want to be a teacher trainer. It wasn't my goal. I enjoyed teaching classes. I didn't like the idea of like trying to like funnel people in to be Sikhs and that kind of thing. That wasn't my goal. It's like, they have their lives, I don't want to put them into something that they're not. I just want to make them feel good, and I wasn't the kind of teacher who did like all the Yogi Bhajan lectures and all that. And I just wanted to, plus the fact that I was kind of more into the physical aspect of it rather than all the meditations and all that. I would have focused more on like doing warm-ups, because I felt like, well, some of these kriyas, they don't really work your body, they're just like working on one little thing. So I I would do like, sun salutations and things, other things, like, it's like, well, they're warm-ups, I can add this in and that in, and make it more kind of a little bit more creative than just following the book, and then, all the meditations, I don't know, I always felt a little self-conscious about some of the meditations, like, oh, this is going to make you this and that, and you're going to be rich if you do this, and then it's all the formulaic kind of prescriptive meditations that they're supposed to do all these things for you. It's like, well, why can't we just meditate and meditate for the sake of meditating? It's like, I don't know. So I didn't. That wasn't my focus. I teach, maybe I do a short meditation at the end, but it wasn't like I was teaching these long meditations. So that was my style. I wasn't the kind who would be regurgitating a yoga bhajan lecture or trying to do his style or whatever. But I realized that there was other teachers who were these very charismatic teachers who were had a lot of students and stuff, and it just, to become a teacher trainer was not something that I felt I wanted to do, but it seemed like that was what you expected. After a while, if you're a teacher and you've been teaching, then you become a teacher trainer. That's kind of like the hierarchy, and that's the steps you follow, and you're supposed to do that. But I didn't really want to do that. So I did you want to say something?
This is in the 90s, right? The late 90s.
Yeah.
2000s-ish, around.
Right. Yeah.
And I just was curious, just in terms of the tracking of your story, after Babadon left and after you gave birth to your first son, did you just kind of stop practicing yoga, like, and not really have a practice so much?
Well, we always had sadhana. I would do sadhana, but it wasn't like, I was going to, yoga classes that much. It wasn't so much of a thing, that, if you were part of the ashram, it's like people in the ashram didn't like really go to the public yoga classes. It wasn't. It's like you kind of had your own life, you were living, and you didn't like attend classes really, or other people's classes. Maybe you taught classes, but the other teachers, if you were a teacher, you didn't go to someone else's class. That just wasn't really done. And so, you do your yoga set at sadhana or whatever, but and maybe your own personal meditation. But I don't feel, and there are times when my sadhana wasn't all that regular. So I guess I didn't really have that regular yoga practice myself, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you had mentioned later on, like, getting back into it and realizing, oh, I am enjoying this again, and then starting to teach. And so it just sounded like there were gaps, and that makes sense.
Yeah, there definitely were, especially during the Montessori years. I was kind of, had kind of let it go quite a bit, and then, I think I did kind of get more inspired to get back into the teaching and the yoga itself. So, but then, as the teacher training thing kind of ramped up, then it just didn't feel like that's where I wanted to go. So, I just, I don't know. At that point, I started feeling like maybe I should pursue something else. Meanwhile, I had actually, I'd gone to New Mexico for a training in pregnancy yoga. That was the first official one. I like teaching the pregnancy and the mommy and me and the kids yoga because it was so kind of creative, and you could do kind of your own thing with it. You didn't have to follow the prescription. You could kind of make things up or put things together yourself. And but then there was the official now pregnancy class that apparently Yoga Bhajan had decided that he was going to do a pregnancy course that after people had asked him to do it, because they've been teaching pregnancy yoga for years and years, but it was like Tanankar had made a manual and all that, but it had never been officially sanctioned by KRI and all that. So this was the first officially sanctioned KRI one. So I decided to go to that training course in New Mexico the summer of 2004, I believe. And that's where I met my future husband, Sri Artar, who was actually at the children's camp at the time. and we were kind of introduced by our friend Atma, who put us together. But anyway, so I met him. He came out to Phoenix after that, and we ended up getting married in the December 2004, shortly after Yogi Bhajan passed away. So, but
were you arranged marriage, or you guys just
no, we
came
had
together?
yeah, we had decided, you know, we had kind of met, and then we were talking on the phone, and then he decided he'd come out to Phoenix, and then you know, we decided that I was kind of feeling like I wanted to get married again. And, you know, at this point I was still very much all in with the Dharma, and he was a very, you know, Dharmic kind of person, and you know, did a sadhana every day and all that kind of thing. So I was like, yeah, well, this seems like a good situation. So
Can I pause you? Can you give us a little perspective, just because I know you, I can ask these questions. By this time, you know, your ex has moved on. He's not in the Dharma. Your son, right? He's probably cut his hair by now. Can you just give us a sense of like how you felt? You're fully entrenched in the Dharma. You just had you know, you had your daughter and you're raising her, but then your ex has moved on and your son is making different choices. Like, what's your inner feeling of these things happening?
okay. So
Right, because this is
well,
90s. I mean, in the 90s, I left Phoenix, so there were
right.
changes happening around you, is my point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's like he'd kind of been in and out of things. You know, he'd gone to he'd actually done one of the master's touch trainings himself. He'd gone to Italy. He'd gotten involved in Satnam Rasayan, been close with Guru Dev Singh.
Okay.
I've done a lot with that. Um, then, you know, he was actually at that point living in Phoenix. He'd met this one girl named Kyla, and they were together. They were wanting to get married. Bibi Bhani was, I mean, she, you know, from early on, she loved spending time with her dad in the summers, and you know, he was like, you know, her fun parent, and she wanted to be with him, and you know, she would go to Hawaii wherever he was and spend the summer with him, and that was like her, you know, her her wonderful time. And I, you know, at the time I was kind of like, you know, he gave her another name. He called her Mele, and I was like, no, that's not her name. And but you know, I mean, now when I think of it, I am very grateful that yeah, she had that perspective. She had a father that she was close to, that was very, you know, good father, attended to her, both of them. You know, he was a great father, is a great father to both of them, and you know, that gave them another view of the world besides Dharma. And yeah, I mean, I'm glad that, you know, he never wanted to be in an ashram or, you know, 3HO business. He, you know, that was never on his thing. Like, oh, you know, don't go to college, go to just become, you know, work for one of our businesses, go work for call security or this or that. It's like he did go to college. He never quite finished, but then he started his own business. And so, you know, he was very independent. And then, you know, she the same, you know, she had her idea about what she wanted to do, went to college and studied. And, you know, so yeah, I just love that they are their own people, that they do what they want to do. And I, you know, I definitely am grateful to Baba for giving them that perspective on the world too. That yeah, it's not all about the Sikh thing. I'm sorry if I you know, tried to indoctrinate with him, which I didn't that much, you know, but I'm sure I did some. But
Well,
you know,
I want to just point out it sounds like you were very putting your relationship with your children and your unconditional love in whatever choices they were making, that they had their free will and you just supported them in that process. And of course, that's what I remember watching, because we were always still close to, you know, to your kids.
yeah.
But that
Well,
they
Bibi
were
Bhani,
like making different choices. That, you know, they like,
yeah,
whether it's wearing your hair down or cutting your hair, or not dating somebody that's a Sikh, or whatever the choices are. To be a mom that's fully chosen a lifestyle and watch your kids make other choices, there has to be something inside about that. That's yeah.
yeah. Well, one thing that I do kind of regret was when Guru Sangeet and Mikhail, they had decided they wanted to get married after being together for a little while, for a few years, I guess. And so then he says, well, Mom, we're want to get married, and we want to get married in the Gurdwara. And I guess they wanted to get married in the new Gurdwara, which wasn't even open yet at the time, but I guess they thought it would be open at the time. I don't remember, but so I was kind of like, really, because I didn't think that I didn't think he had been really aligned with being a Sikh, and she definitely wasn't, and so I was kind of like sort of judgmental about it, like, well, why do you want to get married in Gurdwara? You're not, and this and that. And so, I said, well, go talk to Sol Singh. And Sol Singh said, well, you should come and read from the Guru and this and that. And I, so anyway, that ended up kind of being like a big, they decided they got turned off by the whole thing and they didn't want to do it, And, then they were really mad at me because I was, and so they wouldn't speak to me for a while because I was, so I can see how I was like, a little bit too judgmental about that. If they want to get married there, why not? Whatever. So they ended up getting married in Hawaii, that was kind of my payback, because I was like, oh, well, we're going to get married in Hawaii with Baba and his girlfriend, and and like, they're the good guys and you're the bad guys, and so so I went with the wedding, but it was quite an ordeal for me to actually go there, because I felt like they were still really mad at me. but their marriage didn't last anyway beyond like a year or so. So go figure. Okay. But anyway, and then Bibi Bhani, she when she decided to, she hadn't really wanted to go to India. She was in she was in middle school, and then I kind of gave her the option. I actually sent her over to India with Sarkar to visit when her kids were over there one spring break, to see if she wanted to go there, to see if she liked it, if it was something that she would want to do. So she went over there, and then she came back and said, yeah, she would like to. So we decided we would send her in her first, like her freshman year, or she was in like 9th grade. So she went for a year. I actually went over and visited her during her break too, and spent some time over there. And so she, it seemed like it was okay, but then when it came time for her to go back, she refused. She was like, no, I'm not going back. And was it, she never would really tell me exactly why, but she's like, no, I'm not going back there. And so I don't know, it was some kind of thing that she decided she wanted to do it. So she was home after that, and finished high school in Phoenix at a kind of alternative type of high school, college. So Guru Sangeet was in India for 7 years. She was there for only 1 year.
Okay.
Right there, and of course it was different.
And totally different eras too.
Different situation, of course, yeah. So,
very different eras, but not necessarily such different situations.
Yeah. But she was funny, because she's like, before she went, she said, well, I'm going to cut my hair before I go. She says, because I know I'm not going to be able to do it when I get there. So she says, I'm going to cut my hair before I go. So she was so funny. So I was like, well, okay, it's her hair. And I was going to tell her she couldn't cut her hair. I mean, truthfully, along the way, I had trimmed my hair a few times myself. I was like, my hair's getting too long, it's getting scraggly. I know, I'm just trim it. It's like, I don't know. I guess over the years, it was kind of back and forth. There are many times during my time in the Dharma, I would just feel like, I'm done with this. I just want to be a normal person. I don't want any of this crap. I just want to, but I don't. I was never quite able to do it. I don't know, for whatever reason. I was always drawn back in somehow. I'd go back to ladies' camp or something, and drink the Kool-Aid some more. It was like, yeah, here I am back again. Plus, the whole idea of commitment, and I kind of took that very seriously. It was like, I committed to this. I gave my word. I took on my this and that, and I can't go back on my word. It's not. It's plus the idea of the spiritual teacher. I mean, that was drummed into us that this is your spiritual teacher. If you don't follow your spiritual teacher, then you're going to be damned. You're going to have to come back 8.5 million lifetimes if you don't do it this time. If you don't do it right, and so I kind of believe that.
Yeah.
And it's like fear. It's like, well, I'm here now, but I don't want to be damned for eternity, so I got to do the right thing. So, I did though, kind of when I saw people coming in later, and just kind of getting it, as time went on, and they would get in and just kind of do the yoga, and even go through the teacher training, but they weren't necessarily wanting to become Sikhs. I kind of was a little envious of them, because I was like, well, I have to take on the whole package. It's like why couldn't I just come and do the yoga? But at the time when I got in, it's like you had to do the whole thing. It was part of the package. You had to be a Sikh. You had to get the spiritual. You had to do that. You had to, and then if you left, then you were shunned, and you were a bad person, and you were going to be. So that it's like it was kind of ironic, because like Sikhs, we embrace every other religion. It's all fine. We every path is great, and all religions are equal. But if you decided you're going to do it and be part of this, then if you decide you're going to leave, then no, that's not okay. You're you're gonna pay for it. So
you're horrible. You'll turn into a cockroach. You're off in chakra.
Yeah, right. All that. So it was. I guess I that was one of the things that kept me there. Kept me for so long, is just kind of feeling that pressure of I trying to fulfill a commitment, and not seeing what was going on behind the scenes, and thinking that things are okay. It's like the bad things that were just me. It's like if I couldn't live up to it, it was all on me. It wasn't that there's everything wrong outside of me. I had to just be a better person. I had to do a better sadhana. I had to do this and that. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But then eventually, to kind of continue with my story with my my career, as I was feeling like the teaching of yoga was kind of dwindling. It was not as, I didn't want to follow the teacher training route of becoming the teacher trainer, and some of my classes seemed to be sort of dwindling for one reason or another, and I want to try something else. So I actually worked with a life coach, and I kind of explored different options for careers, and was suggested that I'd always kind of wanted to continue my education. So I came up with the idea of I guess what I came to as a person was occupational therapy was what you take these little tests, and then what are you suited to, and that was the only thing that kind of seemed good to me. And so then I one of my yoga students, I was talking to her about it. One of my long-time yoga students, I was telling her that I was thinking of doing this, and she said, "Oh, you know what? One of my friends has been doing this speech therapy course, where you can become a speech therapy assistant, and it's a 2-year community college or shorter program." And so I thought, wow, I've always been interested in speech therapy, and I hadn't discovered that in my research. And so I looked into it, and I found that there was a course at one of the local community colleges that I could do. And so I decided, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. So I went back to school. I had to get my associate's degree, because I had not, finished college way back when. And I finished my course and got my license. And this was like 2010 when I actually finally got certified. And
You're married for your second time at this point,
I'm
yes?
married, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And right. And so I started working as a speech therapist. First got a job at a school and didn't like that so much, and then ended up doing home health, where we go and work with people in their homes. And so that's what I've been doing for the last 10 years or so, and I love it. It's like I wish I discovered this earlier in life. It's and I had to transition to doing it teletherapy during the COVID time, and now I'm kind of transitioning a little bit back into doing more in-person visits. But it's that's been a good transition for me.
I want to say congratulations for your own career
Yeah,
after so many years. It's a very courageous choice
yeah.
to do
So
that and to pursue that.
I feel grateful that I'm not that once all the revelations came and all that, and I'll go into that shortly, but that I wasn't connected, like so many people were so connected and tied into the web financially, in whatever way, that they had to, the yoga teaching was their livelihood, was their identity, or and it's hard to give that up. That's your whole identity. So I feel very blessed and fortunate that I was able to move away from that, to change my identity into something, identify with something else as my career path, and that I wasn't dependent on that and felt like, oh, I have to somehow maintain that, even though all these things are coming out that it's not really what it was expected to be.
Right.
So I feel blessed and fortunate that I was able to do that.
So bring us to 2020. It's like your
Yeah.
life's fully entrenched. You are practicing Sikh Dharma. You've just married somebody else who's fully in Sikh Dharma. Your kids are obviously making their own choices, but there's a strong connection.
Yeah.
Your oldest son, I mean, he had practiced and learned from Guru Dev Singh with Satnam Rasayan. So it's like they're still connected to the lifestyle, but also making their own choices in the world. But you are fully wearing white, turban, Sikh Dharma in, right? 2020 happens. Did you immediately read Premka?
No, I did not. I first I heard about it. We had we for years and years. Mayor Karan Soul Singh had chanting at their house on Friday nights. Every Friday night, and you've been to that, and I often would be there and lead the chanting, or we'd always go there, even if we weren't leading. And someone mentioned there, well, there's this book, that came out about, that Remka, Pamela Dyson, and about, all these things, Yogi Bhajan, and someone brought it up, and we were like, what? No, that couldn't be right, and so I'd heard things before about people. There was someone who came to Phoenix, a young woman who had said that she had bad experiences with him, and I'd heard about it, but it just, it wasn't part of my reality. It's like, I think that if you're, if you hear something and it doesn't fit with your worldview and your reality, you just kind of discount it.
It's called cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So I everything, but it just, it's like, no, I can't take that in. It's not, it doesn't jive with my reality. And so, I heard things, but then, and people started talking, like Mayor, one formerly known as Mayor Carr, who's now just Mayor, my good friend in Phoenix, she kept kind of sending me things and saying, well, I get this email from, about Sat Pavan, who, was telling about something that happened to her, and then she said, and I've been on the Zoom call with so and so, and then she sent me the link to Philip DeSlip's interview with Shabbat Singh when he talked about, his research into yoga and Kundalini Yoga and Yogi Bhajan and all that. And so it's kind of like, well, I wasn't quite ready to hear some of it, it just wasn't, I kind of, it took me a while, but then eventually, as the months went on, I kind of let it in a little bit. And then, through also my son, he said, I talked to him, I said, well, talk about this book and stuff and what's going on. And he said, yeah, my friends, I know these girls that I grew up with, they were victims, and he told me they were groomed and they were, molested and this and that. And so he said that it's true, it's just really what happened. And then you gotta look into it. So, eventually I did read the book. I got into some of the Zoom calls, listening to the second gen tell their stories, and then I got involved in some of the Facebook groups that are people telling their stories. I guess it wasn't until like mid summer, toward maybe later summer. I mean, I kind of was. I knew it all. I actually we went to New Mexico and visited my son. I talked to him a lot about it then. But I was still wearing a turban and stuff. And then my husband decided to go back to New Mexico, I think in August, to visit his son for a while. And so I had this space, where I could kind of explore and really figure things out on my own. So because with him, he's like, you got to do sun every morning, and he reads all his Banis, and he's like totally into the program. And I had taken down the pictures of Yogi Bhajan and stuff, and first he was like, well, what's going on? And then I told him, and he's like, okay, but it's still, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater kind of thing. And I but I wanted to look into it more deeply, and so I this time I started like looking at videos and interviews with Pamela and looking into Facebook groups and some of the Zoom calls, and I finally read Pamela's book, and I was like, wow, this is not something I want to be part of anymore. And so I made the decision then that I'm not going to wear a white turban anymore. I'm not going to, I really don't want to be associated with it anymore. This is horrendous. And but knowing my husband that he's kind of going to do his thing no matter what, I had to stand my ground and say what I'm going to do. So, and so I kind of just reflected, and I was doing a lot of journaling at the time, and I still do journaling every day almost. And I just decided that, there's certain things that I will do, certain things I won't do. Like I refuse to chant Om Namo, Gurudev Namo anymore. I will chant Agni Rena Bay, because that's from Sri Guru Granth Sahib. That's pretty neutral. So what I do, Japji's okay. I said, I'll do Japji with him, because we do that. Back and forth tantric style Japji. Japji is universal. I think it's a very high vibrational sound current. That's not anything to do with YB or anything. I can do Japji. So now I do Japji with him. I do my yoga, which is my hybrid yoga. I do what feels good. I know. I don't do prayers. I don't do this, that. I do my yoga. And then I love to chant Mamyak Onkar. Like you said, I love that mantra still.
Me too.
I love it. I chant that. After that, I'm gone. He does the rest of the Aquarian sadhana. I leave the room. I go in my journal. I read my Eckhart Tolle or my Deepak Chopra or whatever, or I go for a walk, do my thing, and so I guess it's still evolving, but I just kind of feel like, wow, I'm more myself. And I told him, I said, well, I'm not a Sikh anymore. I'm not 3H anymore. And, he says, well, as long as you're a good person and you're wanting to live in higher consciousness. And I said, I don't like that term, higher consciousness. It's a trigger. That's a trigger concept. But anyway, it's, I've heard that too many times. But, he said, that's fine. So, we've kind of agreed to disagree in those ways. Like, he can do his thing. And, eventually I guess I would hope that maybe he would be willing to look into things a little more. I kind of, in a way, we kind of live separate lives in that I, may not listen to all your podcasts. I told him about them and he's like, I have no interest in them. And, he still feels like he's, a full-on Sikh and everything and wants to do his Bhanis, and that's what works for him.
Sure.
So, yeah, if that's works for him, fine. And if he can, if he can accept what works, that I can be my own person too, that's fine for now. So, but yeah. Anyway, after that, the revelations, I feel like it was just a total eye opener to me that this is, I'm just, amazing that I could have lived that way for so long and not really seeing what was going on. But, like I said, it wasn't a horrible thing. I don't feel like I was a victim. I don't feel like I want to blame anybody that, it was their fault or whatever. Everything I did of my own free will, even though, there were influences and there were maybe some brainwashing, or whatever you want to call it. But
we wanna believe it's free will, but I really want to point out that the picture you painted of what that time was like, it was kind of a built-in subjugated will, meaning give up your will in order to be a part of this. And so I do honor and respect that like you're not speaking to, I have a victim story and my whole life was bad, but more that there was lots of good interwoven with, wow, how did this go on so long? And I never really looked at the larger schemata of the things taking place. I just committed and I stayed with that commitment. And it's honorable, Bibi Bhani. It's honorable. It's your dedication, right? And then at the same time, how dedication and commitment can make us blind.
Yeah, for sure.
So like, wow. And to give us a glimpse into you right now, into this place where you've let yourself be penetrated open, you've let yourself see, and the complexity of being in a relationship, a committed marriage where your husband's making different choices and you're making different choices, and there's not an answer to that right now. It's just you're playing in this space that says, I'm going to continue to discover who I am beyond this, and we'll see how we can hold each other.
Yeah. And also, like, one of the great gifts I think now is also just feeling like the reconnection to all these people, like, who just drifted away over the years, and now it's like oh, we're kind of like coming back, and people, they're part of these groups on Facebook, and I've talked to people who I hadn't talked to in years, and just kind of finding that common ground with people again, or even people that I did kind of know in the Dharma, but now I'm getting to know better through them, everyone kind of more being themselves and being authentic and not just playing this role of being the Dharmic person. So it's just kind of such a gift of expansion, I feel, just to feel the world is broadening rather than being so insular.
So yeah, it's expanding and deepening, where there's a level of depth where things can be talked about that were never talked about, and there's realness that happens there. And I want to also point out that your story is so amazing that way. The amount of people you knew from early on, before they became the next phase of who they were in the Dharma, so many names you mentioned through the different stages, and how significant that is. Like, it just kind of became something more and more and more and more. And your story reflects that, in that after all these years, this veil was finally just completely pulled off. And my curiosity that's showing up around that is, when you read the book, Premka, I mean, it had to have been a level of nostalgia for you because of the place it brings you back during those same era. Did it bring up memories that you didn't ever let yourself think about?
I don't know. I mean, definitely it brought back things that I had, kind of been aware of, but hadn't really known what was going on. Yeah. So, yeah, definitely rang a lot of a lot of bells and things that I, knew had been around and had seen, but hadn't really seen. So, yeah, it was, because I think I was actually in LA around the time when she was leaving. I kind of remember that. It was at the time when I was staying at the estate. I think that was about the time that she was leaving, and I of course didn't really know what was going on. It was just like, oh, she's leaving, and
So when people left, like when people left, whether it was whoever was leaving, there was my mom or different people, and Premka or different people. I mean, lots of people over your era kind of morphed either into something or nothing and then left. Do you recall your state or thinking at that time, or it was just kind of like whatever YB said?
Well, kind of. I didn't ever feel like they were bad people. I always felt like, well, they kind of made that choice, and people can make choices and leave. It's like you can move on with your life. It's not a bad thing if you've been this is a stage of your life, and you wanted to move on to something else. That's okay. It was okay with me. I wasn't judgmental of them, but on the other hand, I wasn't going to seek them out really. I mean, I think in a way I kind of felt a little bit, like I maybe afraid to look into it too much because of what it might reveal. Because I remember when Lana used to be Shakta, I had done the Radiant Child training and everything, and gotten her emails and stuff because I taught children's yoga for so long. And she had a thing when she was leaving, and she sort of was talking about changing her identity and cutting her hair, and she had her story up there, but I didn't try somehow. I wasn't ready to read her story. It's kind of like I thought maybe it would be something that would be too much of a not in sync with my reality. I wasn't ready to see beyond that, so.
Yeah. And I want to just kind of point out for all of us that just like how common that is, it's like when we can get like so entrenched in just like one view of something and not letting our own veil or matrix get pierced to realize that there's a whole nother lens and story that's taking place, and that I really feel like that was really breeded within the culture and community. Like I think it's so easy to take it as like that's just what I did, but no, that was like what we all got taught. Like I remember like somebody would be like, oh, read this, and it's like, oh no, I'm good. No, I get the gist of that, you know what I mean? As if and I feel like that was a part of the breeding around, if you listen to the people doing the thing off the path, you're going to be influenced. And that said enough times becomes a consciousness where you're kind of like, well, yeah, they can do whatever, but I'm not going to have an authentic conversation with you because I don't actually want to know what's actually going on for you. Because if I actually know what's going on for you, I might actually have to feel something.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's true.
Yeah. And again, your story paints that because it's like, you were right there. It's like, wow, just once it got pierced, you were like, oh no, these things weren't for me for a long time. I'm just ready to really go after the person I've slowly been following in your way. Like you were always kind of finding something that was like, something's not right for me. but okay, I'll stay because I made a commitment. And it was just kind of like always acquiescing to the larger. And suddenly when that larger was gone, it's like, no more, I'm not acquiescing. I'm choosing me, and I'm going to feel what this feels like. I'm going to explore, I'm going to play, I'm going to try new things.
Exactly. Yeah.
Way to wear your red scarf.
Okay.
Looking gorgeous.
Yeah, I haven't had the courage to cut my hair fully yet, and I always feel like
Listen, this is real. This is real. I mean, I know I had the thought of it was not easy, you know, and then add style to it. Once I got it cut, that was a whole nother barrier. I mean, we're talking about like stages of major internal psychological barriers around choices that for a lot of people aren't that big of a deal choices, but from our ethos, these are big deals. So
yeah.
I commend
Hey.
you. I say play and enjoy and have fun with your process, which it sounds like you are.
Yeah. Okay.
What, before we go into your song, is there anything more you want to say to listeners to wrap up your story?
Yes, I think just the idea of commitment. Commitment is, it's good to be committed, but commit to yourself. I mean, don't the idea of committing to something outside of yourself, to some organization, some other person, some lifestyle. I mean, just it's not, it's a trap. I believe that. You need to just commit to your own inner guidance, and listen to that, and if you get trapped into other things, you're not going to be authentic and true to yourself. So I think that's where the commitment should lie, not to something outside, something external. That's not going to bring you fulfillment. So just commit to your own self, your own inner guidance, and there can be people that inspire you, people that you can take things from many different places. Be open and think critically, and don't be taken in by just say, if anyone says this is the way, this is the one way, this is the best way, beware and run the other way. Yes.
Yes, good reminder.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, it's been very special to have you here. I know our families have been interwoven for our whole lives, my whole life at least, not your whole life, but my whole life. And, knowing your kids like brothers and sisters and knowing them in their adult lives, all the things. And then Baba Siri Singh was significant in my life in many ways too. So it's like, I find the web of our interconnectivity so beautiful, even in all its complexity and horror. Tell us about your song.
Okay, so my song is I Can See Clearly Now. And this is a song I'm sure many people are familiar with. It's, I'll just read some of the lyrics because there aren't very many. I can see clearly now, the rain is gone. I can see all obstacles in my way. Gone are the dark clouds that made me blind. It's going to be a bright, bright, sunshining day. Oh, yes, I can make it now. The pain is gone. All of the bad feelings have disappeared. Here is that rainbow I've been praying for. It's going to be a bright, bright, sunshiny day. And so the only thing, actually, the second line, if I were singing it, I would change that line, the one that says, I can see all obstacles in my way. I would say, at this point in my life, there are no longer obstacles in my way. And even though I know there may be obstacles to overcome, but at this point, I feel like the main obstacles have been removed, and that veil has been removed, and now, I see a bright future. I am looking forward to just growing and expanding, and I mean, there's some people who say they want to like fix 3HO and all that stuff, and to me, I have no interest in that. I'm like, that's the past. I'm moving on. No way. So Yeah, so this is a song that was sung by Jimmy Cliff, actually written by a man named Johnny Nash, but it was, I'm sure, a familiar song to many of you. So enjoy.
Thank you. It sounds like you're finally doing your actual living meditation of liberation. Way to go. Okay, here we go. Jimmy Cliff, I can see clearly now. Thank you so much. For copyrighted reasons, we don't share the whole song, but if you would like to hear the entire song of any episode, we have the Uncomfortable Conversations podcast playlist on Spotify, and the link is in the episode description. Jimmy Cliff, I can see clearly now. Beautiful song. Thank you, Bibi Bhani. Thank you so much for taking the time to share with us your story, for giving us a glimpse into this incredible past that you've lived and this life that you've lived, and a lens into the unveiling and the awakening process that you're in and you've been going through. I really appreciate you.
And thank you so much for this wonderful podcast, and keep going. And I am so proud of you for the wonderful, amazing woman that you have become. And I know that your father would be very proud of you too. I'm sure he's looking down at you and saying, way to go. Yeah.
Indeed. I feel that. I feel that, and I am grateful for all my family, living and dead.
Yes.
Well, folks, thank you so much. This concludes another episode of the Uncomfortable Conversations podcast, the untold stories of the 3HO Kundalini Yoga community. If you'd like to contribute to this podcast, you can make a one-time or monthly donation at gurunishan.com/uncomfortable conversations. Please also share this broadcast. Share this broadcast with someone that hasn't yet listened to an episode. And it's on all podcasting platforms, and the videos are housed on my YouTube channel. To be a guest on the podcast, please send an email to gn@gurunishan.com. You can subscribe and follow, support my work at gurunishan.com as well. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll talk to you on the next episode.